Dr. Zixthera pressed her four clawed hands against the ancient data terminal. The machine hummed with old power, its lights blinking in patterns she had never seen before. Around her, the massive archive stretched into darkness, filled with the history of 1,000 worlds. She was a Catherian, tall and thin like a giant mantis with large compound eyes that could see details others missed. For 20 years, she had worked in these archives, studying the past of the galaxy. Today felt different. Today, she had found something that should not exist. The data fragment glowed on her screen. It was old, very old. The timestamp showed it was from 4,000 years ago, but that was impossible. 4,000 years ago, there was no galactic civilization, no space travel between stars, no great councils or unified governments. Yet here it was, clear as starlight. Quarantine Protocol Sol 3, classification level, absolute. By order of the Emergency Council, effective immediately. Zixithera's antennae twitched with excitement. Sol 3 meant the third planet of the Sol system. But Sol was just another star system. Nothing special about it. She had checked the star charts many times. Sol had planets, yes, but they were listed as uninhabited. No life, no civilization, nothing worth noting. So why was there a quarantine protocol? She tried to access more of the file, but the computer made angry beeping sounds. Red warnings flashed across her screen. Access denied, clearance insufficient, contact system administrator. That was strange. Zixthera had the highest clearance level in the archives. She could read anything, from military secrets to personal diaries of long-dead emperors. What could be more classified than that? Her fingers danced across the controls, trying different approaches. Maybe the file was corrupted, maybe it was just a computer error. But as she worked, more fragments appeared on her screen. Pieces of conversations, military reports, and scientific data. All of it pointed to the same impossible truth. 4,000 years ago, someone had put a barrier around the Sol system. Not just any barrier, but something that completely cut it off from the rest of the galaxy. And then somehow everyone had forgotten about it. Zixithera leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. How do you make an entire galaxy forget something? It should be impossible. Too many people, too many records, too many witnesses. Yet the evidence was right in front of her. She decided to try a different approach. Instead of accessing the main file, she searched for any mention of Sul in the old records. What she found made her compound eyes go wide with shock. Sul appeared in hundreds of documents from that time period. Trade routes passed through it. Military fleets were stationed there. Scientists wrote papers about the fascinating third planet and its unique development patterns. Then suddenly nothing. No more mentions, no more records, as if the entire system had been erased from history. But you cannot erase a star system. Stars do not just disappear. Zixthera's excitement turned to worry. If this information was real, it meant someone had hidden one of the biggest secrets in galactic history. And if they had hidden it, they probably did not want it found. As if summoned by her thoughts, alarms began blaring throughout the archive. Red lights flashed and automated voices announced, "Security breach, unauthorized access to classified materials. All personnel evacuate immediately." Zixithera's hands shook as she tried to copy the data to her personal storage device. The computer fought her every step of the way, but she was stubborn. This discovery was too important to lose. Heavy footsteps echoed through the archive halls. Security forces moving fast. Zixthera had maybe 2 minutes before they reached her section. She worked frantically, downloading what she could while the alarms screamed around her. Through the chaos, she heard something that made her freeze. Voices, speaking in languages from across the galaxy. Not just security guards, but officials. Important people. And they were all asking the same question. Has she seen the Sol files? That confirmed it. This was not just some old historical curiosity. This was something that still mattered to very powerful people. The download finished just as the first security guard rounded the corner. Zixthera palmed her storage device and tried to look innocent. The guard was a massive draconian, with scales like armor and eyes like burning coals. "Step away from the terminal," he growled in heavily accented galactic standard. "I was just doing research," Zixthera said, keeping her voice steady. "Standard archaeological work. Nothing unusual." But the guard was not listening. He was staring at her screen, at the fragments of data still visible. His expression changed from annoyance to alarm. "Command, we have a problem." He spoke into his communicator. She accessed the Sol files. Within an hour, the archive station was crawling with officials from every major power in the galaxy. Zixathara watched from a holding cell as representatives from the Draconian Empire, the Catherian Science Council, the Aquatic Collective, and 8 other governments held urgent meetings in the main conference room. Through the transparent walls of her cell, she could see them arguing. The Draconian ambassador kept slamming his fist on the table. The aquatic representative's gills fluttered with agitation. Even the normally calm synthetic delegate seemed agitated, its holographic form flickering with stress patterns. They were scared. All of them. But what could frighten the most powerful beings in the galaxy so much that they would drop everything and rush to a remote archive station? A young Catherian aide approached her cell. He looked nervous, constantly checking to make sure no one was watching. "Dr. Zixathara," he whispered. "I am Kethvar from the Science Council. I need to ask you something important. Did you download anything from those files?" Zixathara studied his face. He looked genuinely worried, not threatening. "Why do you want to know?" "Because if you did, you might be in more danger than you realize. There are people in that conference room talking about making sure this information never leaves this station. Do you understand what I mean?" She understood perfectly. They were talking about killing her. "What is so terrible about the Sol system?" she asked. "What happened there?" Kethvar glanced around nervously. "I do not know the whole truth, but I know that Sol is not uninhabited. There is something there, something that was locked away for good reasons. And the barrier around it is still active." "Still active? After 4,000 years?" "Yes, my grandfather was a star cartographer. Before he died, he told me stories about a system that appeared on old charts but could never be reached. He said the space around it was wrong somehow. Ships that got too close would simply disappear." The conference room doors opened and the officials began filing out. They looked grim, like people who had made a difficult decision. Zixathara felt her antennae droop with fear. But as they approached her cell, she noticed something interesting. They were not moving like people coming to execute a prisoner. They were moving like people coming to make a deal. The Draconian ambassador spoke first. "Dr. Zixathara, you have stumbled upon information that has been classified for very good reasons. We are prepared to offer you anything you want: money, position, your own research facility, in exchange for your silence and cooperation." "What if I refuse?" she asked. The ambassador's expression darkened. "Then you will learn why some secrets are kept buried." Zixathara looked at each face around her cell. Fear, determination, and something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. They knew something terrible. Something that made them willing to kill to keep it secret, but they also seemed afraid of what might happen if that secret got out. "I need time to think," she said finally. "You have until tomorrow morning," the ambassador replied. "Choose wisely." As they walked away, Zixathara touched the storage device hidden in her clothing. Whatever was in the Sol system, it was important enough that the most powerful beings in the galaxy would do anything to keep it secret. That made her want to find out the truth even more. Captain Vorth stared at the star chart spread across his ship's main table. The old draconian scales had faded from bright red to dark crimson over his many years of service, but his eyes still burned with the fire of someone who had seen too much and understood too little. "So you are telling me," he said slowly, "that an entire star system has been hidden from the galaxy for 4,000 years, and no one remembers why?" Dr. Zixathara nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the soft light of the ship's bridge. "The evidence is clear, Captain. Something happened at Sol. Something so terrible that every government in the galaxy agreed to lock it away and then erase it from history." 3 weeks had passed since her escape from the archive station. Kethvar had helped her slip away during a shift change, and since then she had been gathering a crew of people who, like her, were tired of living with gaps in their history. Captain Vorth was one of them. His own people, the Draconians, had a strange hole in their military records from exactly 4,000 years ago. Entire fleets simply vanished from the official histories, with no explanation of where they went or what happened to them. "My grandfather served in the Imperial Navy during that time," Vorth continued. "When I was young, he would tell me stories about a great war that was never supposed to have happened. He said the enemy was unlike anything they had ever faced, but he could never explain what made them so different." The ship's crew had gathered in the main hall to hear Zixathara's briefing. They were an unusual group, Kethvar and two other Catherians from the Science Council, a pair of aquatic twins who specialized in ancient languages, a synthetic archaeologist, whose memory banks contained historical data from a dozen civilizations, and three human-shaped androids built by a race that had mysteriously vanished centuries ago. The barrier around Sol is still active, Zixthera explained, calling up a holographic display. According to the data I recovered, it completely surrounds the system. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. It absorbs all electromagnetic radiation, blocks all known forms of communication, and destroys any ship that tries to pass through it. Destroys how? Asked one of the aquatic twins, her gills fluttering with nervousness. Unknown. Ships simply vanish. No debris, no distress signals, no trace they ever existed. The synthetic archaeologist, who called himself Logic, tilted his holographic head. This presents an interesting paradox. If the barrier is impenetrable, how do we know what is inside? And if nothing can escape, how do we know the barrier was built to keep something in rather than to keep something out? It was a good question, one that had been bothering Zixthera since her discovery. I think the answer lies in the monitoring stations. She changed the holographic display to show a different set of data. Long-range scans have detected artificial structures positioned around the Sol system, far outside the barrier itself. They appear to be automated monitoring stations watching and waiting. Waiting for what? Forth asked. Maybe waiting for whatever is inside to try to get out. The ship's engineer, a gruff draconian named Corex, snorted. Or maybe waiting for fools like us to try to get in. There is only one way to find out, Zixthera said. We go there and see for ourselves. The crew spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the journey. Captain Vorth's ship, the Seeker's Pride, was old but reliable, built for long-range exploration. They installed additional sensors, reinforced the hull, and loaded enough supplies for a 6-month journey. As they traveled toward the Sol system, strange things began to happen. It started with dreams. Everyone on the crew began having vivid nightmares about battles they had never fought and places they had never seen. The dreams felt real, more like memories than imagination. In them, massive fleets filled space, firing weapons that tore holes in reality itself. And always, at the center of the battle, was a small blue planet that seemed to call to them. It is affecting our minds somehow, Logic observed during one of their daily briefings. The closer we get to Sol, the stronger the dreams become. I am experiencing data fragments that should not exist in my memory banks, information about technologies that predate my construction by thousands of years. Kethvar had been studying the dreams, trying to find patterns. The strange thing is they are not random. We are all dreaming about the same events, seeing the same battles from different perspectives. It is as if we are remembering something that actually happened. But how can we remember something from 4,000 years ago? Asked one of the aquatic twins. Maybe we are not remembering our own memories, Zixthera suggested. Maybe we are remembering our ancestors' memories. The idea sent chills through the crew. If that was true, it meant their ancestors had been at Sol when whatever happened there took place. And it meant the barrier was not just blocking physical access to the system, it was blocking memories as well. As they drew closer to Sol, the ship's instruments began acting strangely. Navigation systems would suddenly recalibrate themselves without input. Weapon systems activated defensive protocols that none of them had programmed. Even the simple food dispensers began producing rations designed for species that should not exist. It is as if the ship remembers being here before, Captain Vorth muttered, studying the diagnostic reports. But this ship was built only 50 years ago. How can it remember something from 4,000 years ago? The answer came to them when they reached the edge of the Sol system and saw the barrier for the first time. It was massive beyond comprehension, a perfect sphere of absolute darkness that surrounded the entire system. No stars were visible beyond it. No light escaped from within. It was like staring into a hole in space itself. But it was not the barrier that shocked them. It was what surrounded it. Hundreds of monitoring stations hung in space like silent guardians, each one the size of a small moon. They were clearly artificial, built from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And they were active. sending scanning beams toward the barrier and toward any ships that approached. "By the ancient fires," Captain Vorth whispered. "Those are not just monitoring stations, those are weapons platforms." As if responding to his words, the nearest station powered up. Energy readings spiked across their sensors, and a beam of pale light swept across their ship. For a moment, everything went silent. Then Logic spoke, but his voice was different. Older somehow, filled with knowledge that had not been there before. "Welcome back," he said. "We have been waiting for you to return." "Logic?" Zixthara asked carefully. "Are you all right?" The synthetic turned to look at her, and his holographic eyes now held depths they had not possessed before. "I am not Logic. I am the memory of this ship, awakened by proximity to the Sol barrier. I remember the last time we were here. I remember why we had to leave." "What happened here?" Captain Vorth demanded. "We made a terrible mistake," the entity speaking through Logic replied. "We came to Sol thinking we were the first to discover it. We found a species there that seemed primitive, barely capable of spaceflight. We thought we could study them, learn from them, perhaps even guide their development." The entity paused, and when it continued, its voice was filled with something like fear. "We did not understand what they were. We did not realize that contact with them would change us in ways we could never undo. By the time we understood the truth, it was too late. We had become something different, something that was no longer truly us." "What were they?" Zixthara asked. "They called themselves humans," the entity replied, "and they were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Not because they were violent or aggressive, but because they were infectious. Their very presence changed everything around them, including us." The ship shuddered as more monitoring stations powered up around them. Weapon systems that could destroy planets turned in their direction, ready to fire. "The barrier was not built to keep humans in," the entity continued. "It was built to keep the rest of us out, to give the galaxy time to heal from what we had become in their presence." "And now we are back," Captain Vorth said grimly. "Yes," the entity agreed. "And I fear that 4,000 years was not enough time to heal. The infection is already starting again. Can you not feel it? The way your thoughts are changing, becoming more human?" Zixthara realized with growing horror that she could feel it. Her mind was working differently, making connections it had never made before. She was thinking in ways that felt foreign yet somehow natural. "What do we do?" she asked. "You have two choices," the entity replied. "Turn back now and forget you ever came here, or proceed forward and accept the consequences. But know this: if you cross that barrier, you will not be the same when you come out. None of us will be." The crew looked at each other, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in every face. They had come too far to turn back now, even knowing the cost. "Take us through," Captain Vorth ordered. The barrier loomed before them like the mouth of some cosmic beast, ready to swallow them whole. The barrier felt like passing through liquid darkness. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the seeker's pride was suspended in absolute nothingness. No stars, no space, no sense of direction or time. Then, with a sensation like breaking through the surface of a deep ocean, they emerged into the Sol system. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about physics and time. The system was frozen, not cold frozen, but frozen in time itself. Planets hung motionless in their orbits, stopped mid-rotation. Asteroid belts held their rocks in perfect suspension, as if someone had paused the universe with the press of a button. But it was the debris that made Captain Vorth's blood run cold. Scattered throughout the system, from the orbit of the innermost planet to the edge of the outer rim, were the remains of the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships beyond counting floated dead in space, some larger than cities, others small enough to hold only a single pilot. "By the ancient fires," Vorth whispered, staring at the tactical display. "How many fleets are out there?" Kethfer was running calculations on his scanner. "I count over 50,000 ships, Captain. Maybe more. They represent every major species in the galaxy, plus several I do not recognize." Zixthara studied the ship designs through the main viewer. She recognized Draconian battle cruisers, their hulls still bearing the marks of the Imperial Navy. Kitherian science vessels floated nearby, their sensor arrays dark and lifeless. Aquatic deep space carriers hung motionless, their bioluminescent hulls forever dim. These are not ancient ships, she realized with growing horror. Look at the designs, the technology levels. These ships are from our time period. From now. That is impossible, Logic said, though his voice still carried the strange depth of the awakened memory. These ships have been here for 4,000 years, have they? Dr. Zixthera pulled up the detailed scans. The metal fatigue patterns, the radiation exposure levels, even the decay rates of the organic components. This debris is exactly as old as it should be if this battle happened 4,000 years ago. But the technology... She trailed off as the impossible truth hit her. The barrier does not just block space, she said slowly. It blocks time. Inside this sphere, time moves differently than it does outside. What we are seeing is not the past. It is our present, frozen at the moment the barrier was created. Captain Vorth felt his scales prickle with fear. You mean these ships? They came from our galaxy? Our time? I think they came from every time, Zixthera replied. Past, present, maybe even future. The barrier caught them all and froze them here. As if to prove her point, she pointed to a section of space near the fourth planet where several ships hung in formation. They bore the markings of the current Galactic Council, ships that should not exist yet according to the historical records. We need to get closer to the third planet, she said. If the answers are anywhere, they will be there. As they moved deeper into the system, the crew began to notice other disturbing details. Many of the ships showed signs of weapons fire, but not the kind they were familiar with. The damage patterns were strange, as if the ships had been attacked by something that worked on completely different principles than conventional weapons. Look at this, Kethvar called from his science station. He was examining the wreckage of a massive draconian dreadnought. The hull has not been melted or blown apart. It looks like it simply stopped working, as if someone turned off the fundamental forces that held it together. Even more disturbing were the life signs. Faint, barely detectable but present throughout many of the ships. After 4,000 years, there were still living beings aboard some of these vessels, somehow suspended in the same temporal field that held everything else motionless. As they approached the third planet, Earth, according to the old records, the scope of the battle became even more apparent. The planet itself was surrounded by defensive installations the size of moons, weapons platforms that dwarfed anything in current galactic arsenals, and all of them were aimed outward, toward the attacking fleets. The humans were not the aggressors, Zixthera realized. They were defending themselves. The planet itself was beautiful in a way that made their hearts ache. Blue oceans reflected the light of the system's star, while white clouds swirled through an atmosphere that looked perfect for supporting life. Green and brown continents were visible beneath the cloud cover, marked with what looked like cities and settlements. But there was something wrong with it all. The clouds hung motionless in the sky. The ocean showed no waves or movement. Even the planet's rotation had stopped, leaving one hemisphere in eternal day and the other in eternal night. Scanning the surface, Logic reported, I am detecting extensive settlements but no movement. The temporal field extends to the planet's surface. Everything there is frozen as well. Wait, Kethvar said, excitement creeping into his voice. I am picking up an energy signature from the planet's north pole. Something large and artificial. It appears to be active. The source of the energy was a massive installation built into what looked like a mountain of ice. As they drew closer, they could see that it was not a natural formation, but a constructed facility of incredible size and complexity. It is a stasis facility, Zixthera breathed, studying the scanner readings. There are millions of life signs down there, humans in some kind of suspended animation. But as they continued their scans, they discovered something that changed everything they thought they understood. Captain, Logic said, his voice tight with confusion, the technology keeping those humans in stasis. It is not frozen like everything else. It is active, running, adapting, and it is more advanced than anything we have ever seen. How is that possible? Forth demanded. I do not know. But that is not the strangest part. The stasis chambers are not just preserving the humans. They are enhancing them somehow. Their brain activity is off the charts. It is as if they have been thinking, learning, growing for the entire 4,000 years they have been asleep. The implications hit the crew like a physical blow. The humans had not been trapped here accidentally. They had put themselves into stasis deliberately. using the temporal barrier to give themselves 4,000 years of accelerated mental development, while the rest of the galaxy forgot they existed. "We need to land," Zixthera said. "We need to see this for ourselves." But as they began their descent toward the planet's surface, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The stasis facility was powering up, energy readings spiking to levels that should have been impossible. "Something is waking up down there," Kethvar reported, his voice tight with fear. Through the main viewer, they watched as lights began appearing across the planet's surface. Cities that had been dark for millennia started glowing with life. The frozen clouds began to move again, swirling in patterns that looked almost purposeful. And from the stasis facility came a signal, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome back to Sol. We have been waiting for you." The voice was calm, measured, and completely confident. It was the voice of someone who had known this moment would come and had prepared for it across 4,000 years of forced patience. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Please land at the coordinates we are transmitting. We have much to discuss and very little time to discuss it." Captain Vorth looked at his crew, seeing his own mix of fear and fascination reflected in their faces. They had come here looking for answers about the past, but instead they had found something far more dangerous: the future. "Take us down," he ordered. As they descended through Earth's atmosphere, they could see the planet coming back to life around them. Oceans began to move, weather patterns resumed their natural cycles, and light spread across the night side of the planet like stars coming alive. The humans were waking up, and after 4,000 years of preparation, they were ready to rejoin the galaxy. The only question was whether the galaxy was ready for them. The landing coordinates led them to a valley surrounded by snow-capped mountains. As they touched down, they could see figures emerging from underground installations, moving with purpose and confidence despite having been asleep for millennia. At the head of the group was a woman who matched the voice they had heard, Captain Sarah Chen. She looked human, but there was something different about her, something that spoke of intelligence and capability beyond normal limits. As the airlock cycled open and Captain Vorth stepped onto Earth's surface, he felt the change beginning immediately. His thoughts became clearer, sharper, more focused. His understanding of tactics and strategy suddenly expanded in ways he had never experienced. "Welcome to Earth," Captain Chen said with a smile that was both warm and terrifying. "We have been expecting you for a very long time." And in that moment, Vorth understood why the galaxy had been so afraid. The humans were not just waking up. They were beginning to change everything around them again, starting with the crew of the Seeker's Pride. The real question was no longer what had happened 4,000 years ago. The question was what was going to happen now. Captain Sarah Chen looked exactly like the historical records described humans: bipedal, with soft skin instead of scales or chitin, hair instead of sensory organs, and small eyes that somehow seemed to see everything. But there was something else about her, something that made Captain Vorth's instincts scream warnings even as his mind found her fascinating. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to chairs that had been arranged in a circle within what appeared to be a command center carved into the mountain itself. "I know you have questions, and we have been preparing answers for 4,000 years." The walls around them were covered with displays showing star charts, tactical assessments, and data streams that moved too fast for normal minds to follow. But as Vorth looked at them, he found he could understand more than he should have been able to. The information was complex, but somehow his mind was adapting to process it. "This is what we were afraid of," Chen said, noticing his expression. "It is already starting, is it not? Your mind is becoming more efficient, making connections it never made before. You are beginning to think like us." Dr. Zixthera leaned forward in her chair, her compound eyes reflecting the soft light from the displays. "What exactly are you? What makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy?" Chen smiled, but there was sadness in it. "We are an evolutionary accident, a species that developed not just intelligence, but the ability to unconsciously reshape the intelligence of everything around us. We do not mean to do it. It simply happens when other beings spend time in our presence." She gestured to one of the displays which showed brain scans of various species. "Watch what happens when a draconian, a Cytherian, or an aquatic spends extended time with humans. Their neural patterns begin to shift, new connections form, Their thought processes become more efficient, more creative, more human. The scans were undeniable. Over time, the alien brain patterns became more and more similar to human baselines, while retaining their species-specific characteristics. But that sounds like a good thing, Kethavar said. Enhanced intelligence, better problem-solving abilities. Why would anyone object to that? Because it comes at a cost, Jen replied. When we change you, you lose something essential about yourselves. Your unique perspectives, your cultural approaches to problems, your species-specific wisdom. You become better at thinking like humans, but worse at thinking like yourselves. Logic, still carrying the awakened memories of the ship, spoke up. I remember now. When we first encountered humans 4,000 years ago, we thought we were uplifting them. We shared our technology, our knowledge, our culture. But within a generation, we realized that they were changing us instead. The process is not intentional, Chen continued. Humans cannot control it any more than you can control your heartbeat. It is simply what we are. And the more advanced a species becomes through our influence, the more they spread that influence to others. She called up another display, this one showing the spread of human influence across the galaxy 4,000 years ago. It moved like a plague, jumping from species to species, system to system, until nearly every civilization had been touched by it. Within 500 years of first contact, the entire galaxy was thinking like humans. Different cultures, different biologies, but all approaching problems the same way, all valuing the same things, all becoming part of what was essentially a human empire, even though humans had no desire to rule anyone. Captain Vorth felt his scales prickle as he realized the implications. So you were not conquerors. You were a virus, an infectious idea, Chen agreed. And like any infection, eventually the host body developed an immune response. The display changed to show the Great War, the battle whose frozen remnants they had seen throughout the Sol system. It was not a war of territory or resources, but a war for the right to exist as separate, distinct species. The galaxy rose up against human influence, Logic said, his borrowed memories providing the context, not because humans were evil, but because we were losing ourselves. We were becoming human whether we wanted to or not. And humans fought back? Sixthera asked. No, Chen said quietly. We never fought back. How could we? By the time the war started, most of our opponents were thinking like humans. They were using human tactics, human strategies, human approaches to warfare. They could not effectively fight us because they had become too much like us. She paused, looking out through a window at the valley where the Seeker's pride had landed. The war was not humans against aliens. It was humans against humans who happened to have alien bodies, and that made it a tragedy beyond measure. So what ended it? Vorth asked. We did, Chen replied. When we realized what was happening, what we had done to the galaxy without meaning to, we made a choice. We sealed ourselves away and erased the memory of our existence from galactic consciousness. The display showed the construction of the barrier, a massive undertaking that required the cooperation of every major civilization, but it was not built to imprison humans. It was built at human request to give the galaxy time to heal. The barrier was not just a physical wall, Chen explained. It was a temporal field that would allow us to experience accelerated time, while the galaxy experienced normal time. We went into stasis, but our minds remained active, thinking and learning at an accelerated rate. For 4,000 years, Kethavar said in amazement. For us, it has been much longer. Subjectively, we have experienced tens of thousands of years of mental development while our bodies remained unchanged. We have had time to understand ourselves, to study our effect on others, and to develop solutions. What kind of solutions? Zixathera asked, though something in Chen's tone made her afraid of the answer. Chen gestured, and the displays changed to show technical diagrams that hurt to look at directly. The mathematics involved were beyond anything they had ever seen, but somehow their enhanced minds could grasp the basic concepts. We have learned to control our influence, Chen said. Not to eliminate it, that is impossible, but to direct it, shape it, make it voluntary rather than automatic. She stood up and walked to the center of the room. As she did, Vorth could feel something change in the air around them. The constant pressure he had not even realized he was feeling, the sensation of his mind being reshaped, suddenly stopped. You see, I can turn it off, at least temporarily. But the question is, should I? What do you mean? Vorth asked. Your galaxy has had 4,000 years to develop without human influence. In that time, you have achieved remarkable things. You have built a stable civilization, explored countless worlds, developed technologies that amaze even us, but you have also stagnated. The displays showed comparative analyses of galactic development. The rate of scientific advancement, cultural evolution, and technological innovation had all slowed dramatically after humans disappeared. Without human influence to drive innovation and cross-cultural exchange, the galaxy became more stable but less dynamic. You avoided the chaos of rapid change, but you also lost the spark that drives real progress. Chen turned to face them directly. Now we face a choice. We can remain sealed away forever, leaving the galaxy to its stable, slow development, or we can rejoin galactic civilization and accept the consequences of what that means. And what does it mean? Zixthera asked. It means the end of the galaxy as you know it, Chen said simply. Not through conquest or war, but through transformation. Every species we encounter will begin to change to become more like us. Within a few generations, you will all be thinking like humans again. But this time it will be different. This time, we can guide the process, help you retain your essential characteristics while gaining the benefits of enhanced mental capabilities. You will become more than you are now, but you will not lose who you are. Logic spoke up, his voice carrying centuries of downloaded memories. And if we refuse? If we ask you to remain sealed away? Chen's expression grew sad. Then you condemn yourselves to slow decline. The galaxy is facing challenges that will require human-level innovation to overcome. Climate changes on dozens of worlds, resource depletion, the eventual expansion of your sun and others like it. Without the kind of rapid technological advancement that human influence provides, many of your species will not survive the next few millennia. The weight of the choice hung heavy in the air. Accept human influence and lose their essential nature, or reject it and face eventual extinction. There is a third option, Chen said quietly, but it is the most dangerous of all. What option? Fourth demanded. Voluntary symbiosis. Instead of humans unconsciously changing everyone they encounter, we form deliberate partnerships. Humans and non-humans working together, with humans providing the innovative spark and the other species providing their unique perspectives and wisdom. She gestured to the displays, which now showed models of mixed human-alien crews, research teams, and governing bodies. It would require trust on both sides. You would have to accept some degree of mental enhancement, and we would have to accept limits on our influence. But together, we could achieve things that neither humans nor any other species could accomplish alone. The crew of the Seeker's Pride looked at each other, each seeing their own fears and hopes reflected in the other's faces. They had come here seeking answers about the past, but instead they had been handed the future of the gala, the return. Journey to the galactic rim took 3 weeks, but for the crew of the Seeker's Pride it felt like a lifetime. Every day brought new changes as their enhanced minds continued to develop capabilities they had never possessed before. Captain Vorth found himself understanding tactical situations with a clarity that amazed him. Dr. Zixithera saw patterns in archaeological data that had been invisible to her before. Even logic, despite being an artificial being, reported new levels of processing efficiency. But with the enhancements came a growing awareness of what they were losing. Kethvar spent hours in meditation, trying to hold on to the traditional Ketherian approaches to scientific method that were slowly being replaced by more human-like analytical processes. The aquatic twins found their natural telepathic connection becoming more structured, more logical, less instinctive. "We are becoming human," one of them said during a crew meeting as they passed through the barrier for the last time. "Not in body, but in mind. Is this what we want for our species?" The question haunted them all because there was no easy answer. The human influence made them smarter, more innovative, better at solving problems. But it also made them less like themselves. Captain Chen had given them a gift before they left Earth, a communication device that could reach through the barrier. "When your people are ready to make their choice," she had said, "use this to contact us. We will be waiting." Now, as they approached the archive station where their journey had begun, they carried with them the weight of the galaxy's future. Word of their return had spread quickly through official channels. The same representatives who had tried to buy Zixthera's silence 3 weeks ago were waiting for them, but their attitudes had changed dramatically. Fear had been replaced by desperate curiosity. "What did you find?" the Draconian ambassador demanded as soon as they docked. "What is in the Sol system?" Captain Vorth looked at his crew, seeing the same mixture of excitement and uncertainty in their faces. "We found the truth, and now we have to decide what to do with it." The debriefing lasted for days. Representatives from every major civilization listened in growing amazement and horror as the crew of the Seeker's Pride described what they had discovered. The frozen battle, the temporal barrier, the humans, in their mountain fortress with 4,000 years of accumulated knowledge. But it was the demonstration that truly convinced them. Dr. Zix Thera had brought back samples of technology from Earth, simple devices that nonetheless operated on principles far beyond current galactic understanding. When she activated one, a basic scanner that could analyze matter at the quantum level, the effect on the watching scientists was immediate and obvious. Within minutes of studying the device, they began making connections they had never made before. A draconian physicist suddenly understood how to manipulate gravity fields in ways that had been theoretical before. A Catherian biologist realized how to accelerate evolution in controlled environments. An aquatic engineer grasped the principles behind faster-than-light communication. "By the depths," whispered the aquatic representative, watching her people's minds expand in real time. "They are changing us just through their technology. And this is after 4,000 years of separation," Vorth pointed out. "Imagine what direct contact would do." The debate that followed split the galaxy. Some species, led by the younger civilizations, saw human influence as an opportunity for unprecedented advancement. Others, particularly the older cultures, viewed it as an existential threat to their identity. The synthetic collective took an interesting position. "We are already artificial beings," their representative argued. "Human influence cannot make us less than what we are, only more than what we are. We vote for contact." The Catherian Science Council was divided. Half wanted to study human technology and accept the mental enhancements. The other half wanted to maintain their traditional approaches to knowledge. The Draconian Empire was split along military lines. The younger officers, seeing the tactical advantages, pushed for alliance with humanity. The older generals, remembering the stories their grandfathers had told about the last war, urged caution. But it was the discovery of the archives that changed everything. Logic, still carrying the awakened memories from their journey, had been working with Zixathara to unlock more of the historical records. What they found buried in the deepest data vaults made the truth even more complex than anyone had imagined. "The barrier is failing," Logic announced during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "It was never meant to last forever. Our analysis shows it will collapse completely within the next 50 years. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives. If the barrier fell on its own, humanity would be released whether the galaxy wanted it or not. But without preparation, without understanding, the result would be chaos." "There is more," Zixthera added, calling up holographic displays that showed deep space sensor readings. "We have detected movement within the Sol system. The humans are not just sitting in their mountain waiting for us to decide. They are preparing for something." The displays showed massive construction projects throughout human space, ships being built on a scale that dwarfed anything in the frozen battle debris, installations that seemed designed for deep space exploration on an unprecedented scale. "They are getting ready to leave," Vorth realized. "If we do not make contact with them soon, they may simply bypass us entirely and head for unexplored regions of the galaxy." The implications were staggering. If humans spread throughout the galaxy without any guidance or cooperation from existing civilizations, the chaos would be even worse than it had been 4,000 years ago. "We need to vote," the Draconian ambassador said grimly. "Do we make contact with humanity on our terms, or do we wait for them to make contact on theirs?" The vote took place over 7 days, with each species conducting internal debates before casting their decision. In the end, it was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 12 species voted for controlled contact, 6 voted against, and 3 abstained. The dissenters immediately announced their intention to withdraw from galactic civilization entirely, sealing their own systems and refusing all contact with any species that chose to work with humans. It was a fracture that would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. But for those who remained, the work began immediately. Captain Vorth found himself appointed as the first galactic liaison to humanity, a position that required him to return to Earth and begin negotiations for what everyone was calling the new Symbiosis. Dr. Zix Thera was chosen to head the research team that would study human technology and find ways to minimize the cultural impact of human influence. The communication device Captain Chen had given them crackled to life as they prepared for the return journey to Sol. "We have been monitoring your debates." Chen's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. "We are pleased that you have chosen cooperation over isolation, but we must warn you. The galaxy you are about to help create will be unlike anything that has existed before." "Better or worse?" Vorth asked. "Different," Chen replied. "Humanity has spent 4,000 years learning from our mistakes. We will not repeat the errors of the past, but we cannot promise that the future we build together will be comfortable or familiar." "Will our species survive as distinct cultures?" Zix Thera asked, voicing the fear that haunted them all. "Yes," Chen said without hesitation. "But you will become more than you are now, and so will we. True symbiosis changes both partners." As the Seeker's Pride headed back toward Sol, now accompanied by a small fleet of ships from the cooperating civilizations, Captain Vorth reflected on the magnitude of what they were undertaking. They were not just making contact with humanity. They were reshaping the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Species that had remained separate and distinct for millions of years were about to become part of something new and unprecedented. The risks were enormous. They could lose everything that made them unique, everything that defined their cultures and their identities. But the potential rewards were equally vast. Technologies beyond imagination, solutions to problems that seemed impossible, and advancement at a rate that could take them to the stars beyond their galaxy. "Whatever happens," Vorth said to his crew as Earth grew larger on their screens, "we will face it together, human and alien, artificial and organic, working toward a future none of us can fully imagine." Below them, Earth's lights sparkled in patterns that seemed to welcome them home. And throughout the galaxy, other ships were beginning their own journeys toward Sol, carrying representatives of species that had chosen to bet their future on the most dangerous alliance in galactic history. The age of isolation was ending. The age of symbiosis was about to begin. And Captain Sarah Chen, watching from her mountain fortress, smiled as she saw the future unfold exactly as humanity had planned during their long, patient wait in the darkness between the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, it was never meant to stay the same forever. Change was the only constant in the universe,